Okay, let's start the session. Without further ado, So hi everyone, and hi and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. As you know, this is an exclusive invite-only session, and I thank you for taking the effort to register yourselves and being here today. This is the first in a series of webinars that we intend to run frequently, more to share information and knowledge. And if you find this useful, I will have the poll at the end of the session so you can indicate to me that you'd like to be invited to more of these sessions. I know it is Friday and it's after lunch, so I'll try to make this session as informative and as interesting as possible. My name is Stephen Wong, and I'm the Solution Architect for Panaya based in Sydney, Australia. Our session today is about the risk associated with business-driven changes, and the question is whether we could address the risks effectively by optimizing the testing that we do when we implement those changes. Now, before we move into the presentation proper, I just want to say that we love questions. During the webinar, please feel free to send us your questions. And you can do that by looking at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see the Q&A button that you can click to open up the Q&A panel here. All right. Now you can type your questions in there. And if you are shy, you can check this box to send the question anonymously to us. Yeah. And then when you're done with the question, click on the send button and the question will appear on our side. And we will plan to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end of today's session to address any questions you may have. If there are questions that I need to further research and come back to you, and if you have not selected the anonymous button, I can definitely send those answers back to you via your registered email address. Okay, let's move on. All right, so let me start today's session by sharing who is Panaya, by introducing Panaya. So Panaya, we are a software as a service provider, and we provide software that helps our customers focus on delivering innovation by reducing the risks associated with changes. Now, continuous innovation means continuous changes, and changes equals risks, especially when we are making changes to the core applications that power our business, like the SAP ERP application. Panaya, we have been around for more than 10 years, and we've helped thousands of customers over the years to deliver changes, whether those changes are vendor-driven, like upgrades, EHP upgrades, SPS upgrades, or whether they are business-driven changes, or more commonly known as business-as-usual changes. While Panaya may be a smallish company, many of our customers are some of the largest and most prominent names in the world, like Coca-Cola, Mercedes-Benz, GE, and over here in Australia and New Zealand, our clients are well known in various industries like mining, banking, telco, and even governments at the state and council levels. Okay, now as I mentioned earlier, we work with many IT organizations, and if there is one thing in common amongst all of them, it is that IT is sitting in what I would call the center of the storm of changes. Now at the bottom here, we look after our core, complex ERP application that is powering the business. It has lots of components, and they all have interdependencies between them. Whilst we try to maintain a good documentation around the interdependencies, most people I know have long given up maintaining them. Even today's agile practices have made it a point to say that it is more valuable to have working software than reams of documentation. Of course, we can still try to document these inside the code, but trying to manage a centralized location for these documentation is just daunting, and quite frankly, they are not very effective either. Now, on the left side, our businesses are constantly being challenged to be more agile, meaning they must be able to change and respond to the changes in the market. This essentially translates to large number of an increased frequency of changes into the IT department. On the right side, we see that we not only need to be able to change, but we need to be able to do it fast as well. So IT is required to deliver more changes, and they are required to deliver them faster. And what about failures? Nope, our customers have a very low tolerance for failures today. So we need to make sure that what we deliver has low risk of failure as well. So what does IT do? So what we do is typically what all nice IT organizations do, and that is to implement those changes as fast as we could. Sometimes stuff doesn't get done on time and the risks are not addressed. The relationship with the business suffers. The fact is, to support the changes at the pace that is needed, we need to be able to answer these questions. What are the impact of the changes that we are making? What do we need to test? Do we have the time to test it all? And if we don't, how do we prioritize what to test? We ask these questions here, and for many, the answer is test automation. We know we don't know the impact. We know we don't know what exactly to test, so we try to test it all. Regression testing is about testing it all. We know we don't have the time, so let's automate. Now, on the surface of it, that sounds really logical. But I've spoken to many test managers, and I can say that 80 to 90% of them have had their managers tell them to use test automation as well, because it just sounds so logical. Now, many of them have tried it. Some have found success, but many have not. For those that have, they will tell you that it needs commitment and it needs a lot of investment of effort to build and maintain the library of automated test components. While test automation certainly has its merits, I personally do not believe that it is the silver bullet. My personal thinking is this, that it's not really about testing everything. It is more about being able to test the right things. Talking about testing the right things, right? Testing the right things is really about visibility. When you have a tangled mess of interdependencies like this you see here, it's not easy to get that visibility that you need. This is where you should be using technology, but the technology is not to automate testing, but to automate the discovery of these interdependencies. You need to leverage analytics to give you that visibility. And from there, you can decide what are the right things to test. And that's what Panaya is. We apply analytics to your SAP environment and tell you the impact of your changes. That is, which entry points are impacted by the change that you're making. And for the entry points that are impacted, we also tell you how frequently they are used and what's the priority of those entry points. All right, so in the end, with that information, you have visibility, and now you have the facts that you can use to prioritize what to test. And now that you know what are the high priority items versus the not so important items, and if you do not have time to test everything, then you have the facts that you can take and discuss and negotiate with your business as to the risks that they are willing to take to release faster. So all this sounds nice and good, but let me take the next few moments to just share with you how Panaya can help you with that. And with that, I'll jump into the demo. All right, now Panaya is a system that is on the cloud. So we are a software as a service provider. And we know the first thing that we do, all our subscribers do, is first thing they do is they upload what we call an extract, transform, and load, an ETL, of their SAP environment to us. Now, when you upload that ETL into our environment, what our customers get is something like this. Panaya analyzes those information. We capture the date of the ETL. We can tell you where we extracted the code from. So for example, the code in this case is extracted from the development system called DB6, and the usage is extracted from the production system, and the usage period from this time to this time. Now, the longer you use Panaya, the more Panaya knows about your system. So our subscribers typically upload an ETL every week or every once a fortnight. Yeah, and they typically automate that process as well. And once the ETL is uploaded to us, we analyze the size of your system. For example, in this case, we have analyzed that there are about 7,000 objects in my SAP environment. And what those objects are is down here. So we can analyze standard SAP objects, custom objects, your custom codes, and third-party packages as well. We can tell you the objects such as reports, transactions, RFCs, queries, BAPIs, buddies, IDOCs, and lots more. And as I mentioned earlier, we also analyze and we know whether your objects are being used or not. So for example, you can see here, I have a total of 2,800 reports. out of which 2,300 of them are not really used at all. Okay, so we can analyze this information. And not just that, we can also give you a system fitness state report. For example, with that upload that we have here, my little SAP system here, it's on EHP 7. Because Panaya analyzed thousands of SAP environments, we can tell and compare yourself against the others. So for example, my demo system here, I'm on EHP 7. Panaya tells me that 40% of our customers are actually already on EHP 8, right? And within EHP 7, I'm on SPS 4, and I'm really quite far behind the rest of the EHP 7 customers. Okay, now we also can analyze things like, how much of your custom programs are being used. So in this case, I know my demo programs, my demo system has 70% of custom programs that are not really used. Okay, and lots more analysis that we can do. Today, we're not here to look at this. We do plan to have another webinar coming up to actually talk about our analysis of the systems and things like that, right? But what I wanted to show you here is this, is that Panaya, first of all, understands and learns your SAP environment. And that's why we can give you very accurate results from the analysis afterwards. Okay, so we're here to talk about BAU changes. So BAU changes typically come in the form of requirements, right? So typically, like for example here, I may have a requirement coming from my business to implement some new changes to my order management capability within my ERP. All right, now, a lot of our customers have ticketing tools, like for example, ServiceNow or Jira, and they use those to capture these change requests from the business. And that is fine. Panaya can integrate with your existing tools to synchronize those changes into Panaya, as you can see here. For the purpose of the demo, I have synchronized this in here from another one of my ticketing tools. And imagine now that that requirement has dropped in from the business into Panaya. All right, and if I were to click on that requirement and I'm jumping in here, I can actually see the detail of that requirement. Like for example, a description of what needs to be implemented. It can have graphics, it can have, this is a rich text field here, which you can capture all the requirements. All right, we have owners that's been assigned to this requirement as well. But that's not really the focus of our presentation today. So really the focus is about risk and about testing. So I have a requirement coming in here. I know my developers have done some coding. They have started implementing this change. And typically in SAP, they would have created the SAP transports to contain the changes, right? So what Panaya does is this, right? We can actually use Panaya to connect the transports to this change request. All right, now remember I mentioned Panaya knows your SAP system. So Panaya knows the transports that you have in your SAP as well. So let's just say my transports have the word orders in it. So what I want to do is I want to do a search for all the transports in my SAP system that have the word orders in it. And when I click on the search, Panaya finds all these transports that have the word orders in the description field. All right, so let's just say I know that these are the 3 transports that my developers are using to deliver these changes. And then I link it to Panaya. And what Panaya does now, it looks through the 3 transports and it starts calculating the impact and the risk to give me that visibility about what has been impacted by this change. All right, and it's come back and told me that I have 3 high category risks. And when I jump into the risk summary, I get a bit more detail. So for example, what Panaya is telling me is that I have 17 entry points that's going to be impacted by these 3 transports that I just analyzed. Now, all out, and also Panaya has a code analysis capability where we can analyze the code quality within the transports. So in this case, it's found 13 issues. Out of which 61% of those 13 issues are high priority. Now let's just take a quick look at what these issues are. So if I were to click on the performance here, I'm jumping in and I'm actually seeing Panaya telling me that this is the problem that it found. And this is a performance issue, and it's found 3 instances within the package, ZVE, and the program ZVE CDMag. And it's found 3 instances of this same SQL running, right? Now, if I were to click on this little icon here, Panaya can explain a little bit more about what this risk is. And it tells me that it's found identical, 100% identical SQL statements within the same program. And basically the solution is that if you need the same data twice, why don't just run the SQL one time and then store the results in the internal table, and then you can reuse it, right? So again, this is a general solution provided to you so that if in case you as a developer missed this, you could quickly come back and fix the problem before it goes into production. So analyzing code quality and addressing those risks early in your code is one of the things that Panaya can help you with. Okay. Now, secondly, it's really about impact, right? So we mentioned that Panaya has analyzed and has found that 17 entry points are impacted by these 3 transports. And if I were to click on it, Panaya is now showing me what those 17 entry points are. All right. Now, Panaya just shows me what those entry points are. Panaya also helps prioritize those and the impact risk as well. So we have high, we have medium, and we have low. But in this case, all the 17 items that Panaya has detected they have no low. All of them are high or medium, right? High means a direct impact. That means in the code, there is direct impact to these programs. Okay, medium means indirect impact, but nevertheless, they are important enough that Panaya surfaces it to you so that you know these are the components that you need to relook at. These are the components that you need to test to reduce the risk that you see here. Okay, now Panaya also tells you if these objects are used or not, right? So it could be indirect impact, but then again, if it is not used, do you really need to test it? Right? So let's just say now I need to release this change tomorrow, right? And my business is saying, no, we need to do this now, right? And we don't have enough time to test. As a tester, immediately I can come in here and I can select all these unused items and I can scope them out, right? So I know I won't be testing them because I don't have the time. Now, but for these 11 more items, I can now go and talk to my business, okay, my customer, and ask them, okay, so Panaya tells me that all these things are going to be impacted, but we don't have the time from now until tomorrow to test them all, right? And now I can discuss with the user and say, okay, so out of all these things, the ones that are really frequently used are these 5. Can we just test these 5 items? And even then, I may not be able to test it all. I may only be able to test 2 of them. So can we just test ME22N and maybe VL02N? Yeah. And the rest, we will scope it out because, because we just don't have the time. And then the business now can actually come and tell us, oh, no, these are all important stuff. ME21N is important. VL02 is important. You need to test them, right? And we can now have a very factual-based conversation, and we are now sharing that risk. So let's just say the business comes in and say, yep, let's just do these 2 tests. We are absorbing the risk, together, right? So we scope the rest out and we are left with 2 things to test, all right? So now together, IT and business have decided that these are the 2 items that we're going to test when we actually roll this change out tomorrow. Okay, so now the next thing that we do is Panaya is also what we call a test management platform. Now, if you have used tools like HP Quality Center, ALM, you would know what the test management platform is. Essentially, what we do is we can keep track of test cases, we can run tests and keep test results, we can manage defects. We are going to have another webinar just to talk about this capability as well. But because Panaya is a test management platform, which means that you would already have test cases sitting within the Panaya platform. Now, with Panaya, because Panaya, again, once it understands your SAP system, it can connect the entry points with existing test cases that you have on the Panaya platform. So in this case, for ME22N, when I go into the suggested tab here, Panaya tells me that I already have 2 test cases in the platform that I could use to potentially test this so that I don't have to rewrite the test cases. So I can just take any one of these, add it to the test plan, and you see here we will change from no coverage to covered. And If I go to the VL02, right, and you can see that that entry point has been removed from the risk and is now available in the testing tab. Okay, if I go to VL02 and I look at suggested tests, I have that as well. All right, and I can add that to the test plan. And now both my entry points have been addressed by two test cases over here. All right, so I have two test cases that's addressing this risk. And once I start testing it, I have a progress tab here that I can use to refer to see the progress of my testing and if there are any defects linked to this. So again, what this goes towards is really to give us a single place where we are able to look at the risk of a change and connect tests to them so that we address those risks. And you can see that when I jump into the risk summary now, you can see that test validation risk has gone low because we now have tests covering the two entry points that we have decided to test. Whereas impact risk is still high because we are only testing 20% of our impacted components, impacted entry points. Panaya keeps this as a high risk, but we know that between the business and us and IT, this is a risk that we are willing to take because we want to roll this out fast. Okay, so again, this is the capability that Panaya brings to the table, where I'm talking about testing smarter and not testing everything using, you know, test automation, right? And that's essentially what we mean by that. Okay. So let me move on from the demo and into this slide, which says, what does this mean to you? So if you're a developer, what this really means to you is that whenever you change code in your SAP ERP system, you can use Panaya to give you the visibility into the impact of your code, right? The impact that your code is making into the SAP system. And you can then start to take, maybe that will give you additional insights to look at the other impacted components. Now, the code quality corrections bit is again not there to attack your work as a developer, but it's really there to act as a second pair of eyes to validate, the code that you have changed so that you address the issues early before it goes into production. All right. Now, as a tester, it's very clear what this does for you is that number one, we help you focus where to, know where to focus your tests. Out of all the 17 entry points that was impacted, we help you focus on the frequently used ones and the normally used ones. Now, business comes back and tell you, I don't have the time. Then you can have a very factual based discussion with your business, telling them exactly what you need to test. And if the business is acceptable to to increase their risk tolerance, then let's go together as a team and roll that change out. Now, as a release manager, you get a visibility into the risk of every change into production. So let me just come back to the system for a very quick bit and come back to this view here, right? So in this case, this is one view where you can see all the changes, right? And where they are at the moment. And as a release manager, if I know that, I'm going to be rolling out these three changes here, immediately I can have a view as to what is the impact risk, what is the test coverage risk, and how many test cases are tied to it, how many defects are tied to it, right? So immediately as a release manager, I get a very quick view as to the risk I'm taking when I'm pushing this out into the production system.